Hello and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Giraldi.
What's going on, guys?
And today we are getting into the running back starts and sits for your Week 14 lineups. We're excited to get into 4 players. We've got a start of the week, a top 15 play, an iffy top 20 play, and then a possible sit if you can help it. So we're kind of going to pick out a little bit more tiered in this video. If you're with us and you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 325 as quickly as we can. I'm looking forward to hitting that benchmark, and we're going to set new goals on the way throughout the offseason as well. So without further ado, let's get into our first player here. And that guy is going to be Bucky Irving. So he's going up against the Raiders in this game. He just had his best game as a pro against Carolina last week. 25 carries, over 150 rushing yards with a touchdown, 3 catches for over 33 receiving yards as well. A monster day, 185 yards and a touchdown. This is what we've been hoping for from Bucky Irving. He finally got a massive workload on the ground. And, honestly, he just feels like a league winner. He feels like the league winner this year of guys that you probably picked up early. I don't know if you've hung with him, and now you're reaping the benefits. He's been decent enough as like a low-end flex option, but now he's locked in as a top 10 running back. So that's why we have him listed here. Top 10 play this week, probably even better than that over the rest of the season with the Chargers, Dallas, and Carolina still on his schedule in the playoffs. I expect major things from him rest of season. The one detractor from him is he's pretty banged up right now. He's got a hip and a back injury. He still didn't practice on Thursday as of this recording. So I do expect him to practice on Friday and play on the weekend. I think they're trying to manage his injuries after such a major workload. But just, consider that when getting aboard the hype train for Bucky Irving, because I'm all aboard. I'm in. I don't think those injuries are going to hold it back. I think he is just so good that we're going to see him explode over and over, throughout the rest of the year. So what do you got? What do you think? What do you think about that? What do you think on Bucky Irving?
I love Bucky, man. And going back to our pre-draft process, we had him as the number 4 running back, which was maybe a little bit ahead of consensus, but I always get taken back to a couple days before our draft when you're like, man, I like White, but I just can't stop watching this Bucky Irving preseason tape. And I'm like, dude, Bucky's good. I'm not drafting White. Bucky is awesome. And, it took a little while, both were kind of coexisting and, but the post-buy rookie bump, man, 24 and 26 half PPR points the last 2 weeks. We are seeing that come to life. And I was rewatching all his runs from last week, and it was it felt like, I know the yardage was insane. I know he had an insane game, but sometimes it just looked even better. So unfortunately in our league, I'm facing against Bucky, so I'm kind of tongue in cheek with all this, but he's just such a fun player to watch, man. And in this game, Bucks are a 7-point favorite. They've got the 5th highest implied team total on the week, so it's looking like a pretty positive game script for Bucky. And I know we talked about these guys in the past, Baker just loves to throw so much, even if it's a good game script. And while that might be true, he's still getting a bunch of targets. So this is all lining up for a really big week for Bucky.
Yeah, seriously. And I was going to mention the rookie bump after the bye week, right? We talk about that with all the players across the board, right? Even if it doesn't happen. It's just when it does, it's such a major improvement in role. And that's what happened here with Bucky. He had been getting it going, obviously. And even like you mentioned, the targets, he's got 6 straight weeks with at least 3 targets. And he has caught every single target over that span. He had 3, 7, 3, 3, 6, and 3. He has caught every target over that span since week 7. And so I just think he's got a very secure role. He gets very high percentage passes in the passing game. Obviously, the rushing is great. I like that you mentioned the Bucky Irving thing. I know Rachaad White in the preseason was ranked quite a bit ahead of Alvin Kamara. And I was sitting on the clock with those two in our draft, and I just could not pick White because of Bucky. I was too worried about Bucky, and I went with Kamara. And that decision saved my season, honestly, in our league, because Kamara's obviously been awesome. I didn't put my money where my mouth was with Bucky enough. Unfortunately, I didn't end up with him anywhere. He obviously got picked up. He was a popular claim after he had a good week 1. And I picked Jermaine Burton over him in a rookie draft in my Dynasty League, and I will regret that for as long as he is playing like this. So obviously we love Bucky. And so obviously, getting him into your starting lineups and just adding a little bit of extra content and information on Bucky and hype on Bucky, because it's so exciting to be talking about somebody that's going to be this good over the rest of the year.
It's a good time to be an ex-Oregon Duck. Like you got Bo Nix playing
Yeah.
well, you got Bucky playing well, you got Oregon as the number one seed. Like, let's go Ducks.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Good. That's the second guy that we're going to talk about here that I have as a start and as a top 15 play this week is Rico Dowdle. So he's going up against Cincinnati, and that matchup fuels a lot of this because their defense is just horrible. Dowdle is one of the only skill position players on Dallas that's really worth anything right now. And he just had a very good game, right? Another player that just had his best week as a pro last week against the Giants. He had 22 carries, 112 yards, and a touchdown, 3 catches for 11 yards. He's being slept on maybe a little bit as a pass catcher, too. He's got 5 straight games with at least 3 targets. If that continues against the Bengals, I think he can be efficient in a way that he hasn't been otherwise through the air in this matchup. So I think that, we could expect maybe 3 for 30 and a possible score either on the ground or through the air. And I think that's exciting for Dowdle, the owners this week. Somebody who, again, one of those guys that you've just kind of been keeping around. And it's like, should I cut him? Should I not? Why is Zeke still playing? Though, we've talked about that throughout the year. But I do think going into this matchup, he is clearly the workhorse. Now he's got 19 carries and 22 carries over the last 2 weeks. And, Zeke was like inactive because of disciplinary issues, because he was complaining about his role. And then, then they kind of turned the keys over, snap percentage and the rushing work all to Dowdle. So I have a lot of confidence playing him this week, and I expect a good game from him against the Bengals.
Yeah, I like Dowdle a lot this week. And Zeke is finally out of the picture. He only got 1 touch last week. It was funny during Thanksgiving. I was trying to eat my dessert, drink my beer, play with my little cousins, and I see Dowdle just going off. And it was awesome because I started him in a league. And I think it was important that he said, we preached patience with Dowdle all season long. He wasn't at the start, but he wasn't a cut, and it's finally kind of paying dividends. And that 20-yard run he had last week was the first 20-yard run for the Cowboys all year, which is just a testament to how bad their running game has been. It's just been brutal.
No explosive plays.
The Bengals they're not just bad. They're atrocious right now on defense. This is kind of where we started the year at, where how bad they were at stopping the run. They kind of figured it out maybe a little bit, but now it's just garbage, man. So I like him this week.
Yeah, they were so bad early against the run that people didn't even, or teams weren't even really having to throw a ton against them. Then they kind of figured out the run defense, and then the teams figured out that they could just launch it against them too. And then so they tried to fix it back in, and the run game fell apart again because they're able to throw the ball so effectively. So the Bengals are just in shambles on defense. So we love the matchup, love the player. Obviously, we were talking about him early in the preseason. I mean, you have him on so many best ball leagues, so hopefully that helps you over the rest of the year. And if you make any of the playoffs in your best ball leagues, because I do think he has pretty easy schedule, and the fact that they're not going to be able to move the ball super effectively with Cooper Rush in the air, I think Dowdle is going to be a huge part of this offense for the rest of the season. Going on to the next player that we want to talk about here, the iffy start, right? The one that's still probably top 20, maybe top 25, right in that range, is Najee Harris. So this one's really tough because he has been excellent pretty much for the last month and a half, or kind of all
since Russ took over. He's averaged 13.6 half PPR points since Russ took over. It's been kind of night and day. Yeah.
And even the week before Russ took over, he had 19 and a half too. So it was I don't know. He's just been so productive. It's just really hard to imagine you're in a situation where you own Najee Harris and you're going to sit him. And especially over these last 3 weeks, you see that he has 5, 2, and 6 targets. And, I don't know. He's that was something that coming into the year, maybe we didn't even expect him to get. And then he's getting at least 15 carries, 16 carries over this stretch too. He scored a touchdown, 75 yards last week. But the matchup, I think, has me a little bit concerned. He just went up against Cleveland 2 weeks ago, and he only had 2.5 a carry, only 40 yards on the ground and 13 in the air, right? And so turning around, they're going to get Cleveland again. I think they're going to play a ball control game where they try and keep it out of Winston's hands. And, Najee should be a big part of that. But in that game with Cleveland, that was the big Warren game where Warren had randomly had 14 carries and he had 4 or 5 targets. And then Warren completely took a back seat last week in week 13. So, I don't know. Najee only played 39% of the snaps too. That was his lowest snap share since Russ took over against Cleveland. I'm not really sure what happened. I just know that that's the same matchup that he's getting again this week. Wanted to highlight him as somebody that you're probably starting, but not nearly as enthusiastic about him this week as I am Dowdle or Bucky, especially.
Yeah, it's weird because his build and his style, like I would have projected him to be much better in a snow game like that. But I think that game overall was just like a little bit funky. So I'm kind of throwing that out the window a little bit. And that was the only game that he didn't get at least 20 touches since week 6. So I'm confident starting Cleveland right now. We never know what to expect in these Cleveland games, man. Like they beat the Ravens and then they throw 2 pick sixes against the Broncos. Like I'm kind of excited for this game as a football sicko, but I feel confident in Najee this week.
Yeah, and like I said off the top, you're not sitting Najee, right? If you have him,
Yeah,
you're going back to him. The passing game work has just been very surprising in elevating his floor. So you want to make sure he's in your lineups, and also that adds more confidence to Dowdle too. Seeing Najee go off for all that receiving work, like Dowdle is getting targets in this game. Cincinnati's defense is so bad.
Brees Hall if he goes over Najee, or
yes. Yeah,
okay.
I think you got to keep starting Najee. You guys keep starting Brees Hall. He's unfortunately so bad over the last couple of weeks, and he's been banged up. The role has been interesting, but I think you got to keep going back to him. You can't have a 30-point game from Brees on your bench at this point in the year. It's just that's how you don't forget missing the playoffs. That's how you don't forget missing out on a bye week, is if you sit a guy of that caliber just because he's banged up or he hasn't been good. So really, if you go and look at Brees Hall's game log, it's really not that bad. He had a couple weeks earlier in the season, like 9-11 or something, where he was bad, and then he was bad last week. But before the bye, he had 31 points. So it's there. If he is feeling better and looks like he's going to be a full go, I don't think you can bench him no matter what.
I think that's a good point of like just kind of starting your studs throughout the playoffs. You and I in the past have kind of overthought roster decisions, which have kind of bit us in the ass. But I think with someone like Brees Hall, who you took first, second round, like stick with them.
Yeah, completely agree. Anybody else you want to compare Najee against?
Ooh, how about Chuba in a tough matchup against Philly?
No, I'm not playing Chuba.
Okay.
No matter what. I think Jonathan Brooks looked way too good last week. He took all the receiving game work, and Chuba lost them the game on that fumble. I am not playing Chuba pretty much no matter what.
Brooks looked good, and if he would have, they gave him so many chances to get in the end zone on that drive. I would have won $120 on a parlay. I had like some weird interception and a Brooks touchdown, like just great odds, and I was like, "Oh my god, he's gonna get in!
Get him in!
I was freaking out.
I don't mean to like talk down on Chuba too much, and I know he got that contract, but like watching Brooks actually get full drives in this game last week. I know he only played 21% of the snaps, but he got a couple full drives to himself, and I was like, wait a second, this is different. Like he's not fully back. This is only his second game. He's not going to play a full allotment of snaps, but he looked better than I was even expecting coming into that game. So I'm out on Chuba. All right, moving into the last player we're going to talk about here is Isiah Pacheco going up against the Chargers. So unfortunately on Pacheco, I don't think this is somebody that I'm rushing to start. Obviously, you were excited to get him back, wanted to get him in the lineup, thought maybe Kareem Hunt was going to go away right away and it was going to turn right back to Pacheco. But this injury that he's coming back from, this broken fibula bone, is no joke. Like we saw Tony Pollard struggle for an entire year, basically, until like the last month of the season last year after breaking his fibula the year before. And so I'm really worried just about the ability for him to return to form and about the Chiefs needing to push him until they get to the playoffs, right? They got a lot of runway here over the last 5 weeks of the regular season for the NFL to ramp him up, to get him going. And they have Hunt who can take on a workload anyways. I mean, he showed that while Pacheco was out. So, and then you add on top that you got the Chargers. So I'm unsure about the role. I'm unsure about how much the Chiefs are going to push him. And then you're going up against the Chargers, who are a very tough defense to run against. They're going to keep the number of plays low. They're going to be trying to ball control, run the ball, third down conversions, right? The Chargers are just going to try and keep chipping away, lean into their defense. So we mentioned this in the quarterback video as well with Mahomes, that we just don't know how much the upside is here with the Chiefs offense overall in this matchup, and Pacheco falls right into that. So I don't want to say I have him outside the top 30, but bordering on that top 30 running backs, I think is more what I'm expecting from Pacheco this week.
Yeah, I like the call because if someone's like looking at the stat lines and they're like, okay, Pacheco got 7 carries for 44 yards, Kareem Hunt got 7 carries, but only for 15 yards, like they're just going to load Pacheco up. But one of those runs was 34 yards. So, like, kind of take that with a grain of salt. So, I do expect kind of a committee approach in this one. The Chargers' run defense hasn't been as strong as it was earlier in the season. The last 4 weeks, they've given up the fourth most yards per game on the ground, but I know a lot of that has to do with playing against Bijan and Derrick Henry specifically the last couple of weeks, but they one of the announcers kind of talked about this in I believe it was the Ravens game. Their defense is kind of set up in a way where they'll kind of let you get a couple yards at a time to kind of get the big game. But for me with Pacheco, like if he doesn't get in the end zone, that could mean like 10 for 54. And it's like, are you really starting that with your potential playoff hopes on the line?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more there. And the other thing I was really hoping for in the first game back is that they'd get him some easy touches in the passing game, right? That they'd get him on a screen where he wouldn't necessarily get hit or have to go through the lineman, right? And that, maybe they get him on a wheel route or something outside where he's got the sideline help where he won't get hit. But he only had one target. And I was like, I don't know that I saw that coming either. I thought he was going to be much more involved in that aspect, and he wasn't. So, until we see it with him, I'm going to be hesitating on playing him at all. I know he's got some good matchups coming up. I'm hoping we see an expanded workload this week. And then against Cleveland or going into the playoffs, you can have more confidence playing him. But until then, and especially this week, I'm going to try and leave Pacheco on my bench if I can.
I agree.
All right, with that, thank you so much for listening. We look forward to talking to you guys in the next one. If you're still with us, hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Later.